Hello. It is time for another episode. It is really dark. Sorry. It is time for another episode of, this week's episode of Weekend Reading, where I talk about what I read, what trades I read last weekend, and tell you which one was my favorite. Talk about what I'll be reading this weekend, and then there's a little discussion at the end, which we actually have a whole new thing that I'm going to do today, but I'll get to that. Let's get to what we had last week. Last week, we had Daredevil Volume 6, Doing Time, which was pretty good. Nice to see Elektra taking up the role of Daredevil. We had Firepower Volume 1, Prelude, which is a new series, at least for me. It's actually been out for quite a bit, but it was a good read. And we also had Captain Marvel, Volume 6, Strange Magic, which was better than the description on the back of it made it sound. As for what was my favorite, that would be Firepower, Volume 1, Prelude. Like I said, this is a new series for me. It's by Robert Kirkman and Chris Samney, which is a good, Chris Samney, good combination. It's an interesting book. It's definitely very martial arts heavily influenced. Seems like a weird combination almost of the TV show Kung Fu and the comic book Iron Fist. It's definitely heavily influenced by Iron Fist. It's about a guy named Owen Johnson who is traveling through what looks like the Himalayas or something like that, and ends up at a temple called the Temple of the Flaming Fist, where he's greeted by Master Lun, who challenges him in martial arts, which Owen is skilled in because he's been searching around for connections to his birth parents because he's an orphan. So he's been looking for them everywhere, and everywhere he's gone, he's learned martial arts along the way. So he ends up he gets accepted at this temple. He ends up staying there. He learns that they sort of have this weird technique to sort of channel and absorb and manipulate the very energy in the air to sort of heat it up so they can actually, redirect energy to sort of like heat their attacks, like heat up their hands and everything like that, so they can actually burn people with their punches and things like that. He befriends this woman named Zan and becomes friends with her, and a little bit almost more than a friend. He develops sort of an enmity with this other guy named Guang, who at the end they sort of become allies. And he gets close to Master Lun. He learns about the founder of the temple called Master Shaw, who, according to legend, there's a statue of him, but according to legend, that is Master Shaw, and somehow he turned to stone to, forever guard the temple. Owen learns that along the way that his family, the reason he was brought here is because his family does have a connection to this place. His father was a member of the temple before he betrayed them for Owen's mother, who was a member of what is known as the Scorched Earth clan. Apparently, somewhere in this temple, they have a guarded room where they are hiding something. They claim it's a dragon, but we don't get any word of that. But they claim that there's something being kept in the temple, and this Scorched Earth clan wants to release whatever in that temple to scorch the earth. He also learns that Master Lun is trying to remaster something called the Technique of the Flaming Hand, where they have the ability to manipulate energy, like I suggested, but there's a technique to harness energy and literally throw fire from their hands that Master Lun is trying to rediscover. Apparently, Master Shaw is the one who created it, and Master Lun is trying to rediscover that technique because it's been lost. So Owen trains with him a little bit to try to rediscover it himself. And then eventually they're attacked by the clan of the Scorched Earth, as you would predict. It's a massive battle, and during it, Owen actually, as you would expect since he's the main character, rediscovers the technique of the Flaming Fist and shoots fire from his hands. And it seems like, oh wow, this really changes. And he manages to drive off the Scorched Earth clan, and he's like, wow, this is really going to change things. And then the story takes a major left turn by just jumping 15 years in the future, and we're in a completely new setting. So it'll be interesting to see where the series goes from there. But I'm in. It's a good book. Kirkman's always pretty fun until he's not. So we'll see. So yes, that was Firepower, Volume 1, Prelude. This is going to be an interesting series for sure. That was last week. What do we got coming up for this weekend? Well, we have Reign of X, Volume 4. Reign of X, the X-Men. They've been interesting lately. Old friends and new faces in the Reign of X. Wolverine finds himself in a jam alongside his former Team X compatriot Maverick, but the reunion won't last long if they can't break free of the Legacy House. As the members of Excalibur reckon with their losses, two heads of state seek to restore the status quo. All hail Queen Elizabeth III. All hail Queen Elizabeth III. Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, Siren is dying over and over, and X-Factor must follow the screams. Cable teams up with Domino again for the first time, but will fortune favor Nathan, or has he met his match? And who are the young heroes with familiar powers breaking the law against teenage vigilantes? Can the X-Men find the mysterious children of the Atom before the authorities do? Let's see. Collecting Wolverine 10 by Benjamin Percy, Teenie Howard, and Leah Williams. Excalibur 17 by Gary Dugan, Vita Ayala, and Adam Kubert. X Factor 6 by Marcus Toe, David Baldion, and Phil Noto. Cable 8 by Bernard Chang, Frank Martin, Eric Arcianega, and Israel Selva. And Children of the Atom 1 by Marcelo Maiolo. Yeah, I think I said that right. So, yeah. This has been a solid read lately. I like the way I do like the way they're collecting all the X books together. It makes it so much easier to collect everything than getting a bunch of different trades. Speaking of the favorite of last week, Firepower Volume 2, Home Fire. So, picking up where we left off. There's gonna be more of this too. I got a third volume for the week after this as well. So, we'll see. All new series created by Robert Kirkman and Chris Samnee. The one who wields the firepower is destined to save the world, but Owen Johnson has turned his back on that life. He doesn't want the power. He never did. He only wants to raise his family and live his life, but unseen forces are at work to make that impossible. Danger lurks around every corner as Owen's past comes back to haunt him. Collecting Firepower 1 through 6. What? That's weird. I don't know what I don't know how it's 1 through 6, but whatever. That's what it says. So we'll see. It was the best one last week. Maybe it'll be the best one in the coming week too. And then finally, Justice League Death Metal. We're still in this death metal shit. You think we would have actually gotten the main miniseries of Death Metal already, but it still hasn't come out. Enter the Metalverse. Spinning out of Dark Knight's death metal, Nightwing's on a special mission to free the Legion of Doom from perpetuous clutches, and he's formed his own Justice League to do it. Starfire, Cyborg, Hawkgirl, and Detective Chimp team up to fight their way through an Earth twisted by the dark multiverse. But they'll need one more to get the job done, none other than Lex Luthor. Featuring the talents of superstar writer Joshua Williamson and fan favorite artist Hermanico, that's it, just one name, and Robson Roca. This volume collects Justice League 53 through 57. So yeah, going back a little with this death metal shit, but you know, we'll see. It's been an interesting read so far. So yeah, that's what's coming up next week. Now I said I had something new, so no question of the week. No abandoned plot. I decided to do something completely new. Come up with a new thing, actually. And I've been trying to think of what to name it. I'm not very good with names, if you hadn't noticed. But I think I'm going to call it Comic Issues. Does that sound like a good name? Comic Issues? It doesn't sound that dynamic. It doesn't sound... I was thinking maybe ongoing issues, but that seems... You know what? I'm going to stick with comic issues. I like it. I think it works for what I'm getting into here. What is it, you might ask? Well, I'm going to pop... It's something... Normally I stay out of the controversies of the comic book world, but sometimes they spill over too much that you can't ignore them. Like, for instance... Does this picture elicit some sort of reaction from you? Because it's elicited a reaction from a lot of people. What that is that earlier this week, DC Comics let everybody know that in November, hasn't even happened yet, in November, an issue of Superman, Son of Kal-El, which is the new ongoing Superman comic book. The current Superman, Jonathan Kent, who is the son of the original Superman, Kal-El, also known as Clark Kent, and Lois Lane, will have a boyfriend. He will come out as bisexual. Not gay, just bisexual, and he will have a boyfriend in the form of some, I think his name is Jay Nakamura, and he's a internet hacktivist, which is a stupid term, and he's sort of basically an internet journalist, if you will, which makes sense considering it's supposed to be the dynamic that's sort of like what Clark Kent and Lois Lane had. Like, this is his Lois Lane, I guess. No, it's a story, just like any other story. There's been a lot more, at least attempts at representation in comic books in recent years. You know, some of the big ones were just a couple months ago. They announced that Tim Drake, the current Robin, was also going to be bisexual and have a boyfriend. I think that was an issue that already happened. A couple years ago, in Marvel Comics, Iceman of the X-Men came out as gay. Just straight up gay. And, you know, you might think how a character with like a 50-year history, a 50-plus year history, could all of a sudden just be gay out of the blue, but it's just like, I don't know, there's lots of guys out there who live closeted lives and, you know, eventually later in life realize, like, oh no, I am gay and I should stop lying to myself. And especially when they dealt with the fact that, you know, Iceman came from a very conservative, somewhat bigoted background with his family. His parents are very old-fashioned type people, let's say. Something they addressed when he had a comic book for a while after coming out as gay. So a lot of the controversy has been people criticizing this. You know, there's been, of course, there's been the major criticism. You have, you know, conservative people, you know, using this as the example of like they're trying to corrupt our society and corrupt our youth. You know, this became such a bigger story than it should have been. I mean, you have politicians talking about this. You have politicians in other countries talking about this shit. You even had some people in DC Comics, you know, exclusive writer or artists making their own little jabs at it. there was one that stood out to me, because there was one that was talked about a lot, and that was, I heard a lot of criticism of Dean Cain's comments on it. Dean Cain, of course, in the 90s played Superman on television, and then did pretty much nothing else after that. And then, like every other Hollywood wash-up, he became conservative. That's not true. Not all the Hollywood wash-ups become conservative, but there's a lot of fucking D-list who gives a fuck actors who become conservative. I don't know if that's somehow related. I don't know if there's a relation to that. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. Anyways, Dean Cain, who is conservative, I saw a lot of people criticizing what he had to say. And I was going to make mention of it, and then I realized I didn't actually hear what it was he said. I only heard criticism of it. So I went and looked up what he said, and I would strongly recommend you do if you have any interest, because what he says, in my opinion, isn't that bad. He doesn't criticize Superman being bisexual. He criticizes DC's handling of it. More so, they're patting themselves on the back and taking a victory lap over this. They're going out of their way to fucking promote this as it's this big thing. Now, the writer Tom Taylor, who's the guy who's writing this Superman book right now, is making a big deal about this. He's been talking about it, saying that this isn't a stunt. He thinks there should be representation for bisexual people, and that's all well and good. That's fine. He's absolutely right. And Dean Cain didn't criticize that in any way. Like I said, he just criticized DC's kind of, like, he called it bandwagon jumping, and he actually pointed out that there have been gay characters before this. There have been bisexual characters before this. He even brought up how Robin came out as bisexual not too long before this, and nobody made as big a deal about it as they're making about this. DC didn't promote it as much. But for some reason, they really want to, pat themselves on the back for this. And he's like, it's not really that big of a deal. It's like we're kind of past that point. And then he also brings up how Superman will, be taking on things like climate change and refugee shit. And there's even this, cover of a comic book issue that shows him protesting, which has received criticisms from a lot of people. People who are sort of on the more liberal side saying it's just like, Superman's protesting? It's like, dude, you're Superman. If you really want to change things, you could do more than that. And Dean Cain kind of said something similar. He's like, he wants to come out and, help, people who are trying to keep refugees, not help people who are trying to keep refugees out of their country. He wants to help refugees who are coming into the country, have less problems doing that. And he just kind of made the point, it's like, he's Superman. Why doesn't he use his abilities to stop whatever the refugees are fleeing their country from? And then use the analogy for, like, the Taliban and shit, which is causing a current refugee crisis, because he's, like a lot of conservatives, he's very, America first, anything that's different from us, we must destroy militarily and shit. Not that there aren't fucking liberals who aren't like that too. I'm not going to get into all that. That's not what I'm trying to get into here. But it's a valid point, because they're both making the same point of, why doesn't he do more? Like, why is Superman only protesting when he could do more? Why is he only trying to help refugees find a home here when he could go help whatever, why doesn't he go to where their home is and, stop that? Which is something that's even been addressed in his comic book. When his father left Earth, just before his father left Earth, he has like, why don't you do more? And it's just like, and Superman made the point of like, well, like, this isn't my home. I am a guest here, and I can help them. I can lead by example. He's like, but, you're from here. You can do more. It's just like, which is a lot to put on him. And also, it's like, I think you can only lead. I'm of the opinion that you can only lead by example. That anything more than that is tyranny. I really am. That might seem like an extreme position, but if you're just trying to straight up tell people what to do and how to be and how to live, you're a tyrant. And that's kind of the point. That's why he can't just charge into other countries and tell people how to do things. That's why he can't just in this country tell people how to do things because of what he thinks is right. Because if you think, well, I just have the power to do whatever I want and make people live by my point of view because I'm this powerful, you're not a good person. You're not a hero. Which is something that I've addressed before. I've addressed this way before. You can go look up a back episode of this. I have addressed this before about whether heroes are really heroic when they just practice on the principle of might equals right. So Superman toes that weird line where he's a hero because he's powerful, but if he just fucks his power too much, is he really a hero anymore? Now, part of the problem is that a lot of this discourse is brought up about Superman being bisexual is that some people were like, well, why does Superman have to just be bisexual now? Why do they have to change characters? Because a lot of people think it was the current Superman. So let me give a little refresher course on that. Back in 1996, Superman and Lois Lane got married. Fast forward to 2015, a lot of comic book shenanigans happened, but Lois and Clark came back. The couple of Lois and Clark came back. Came back from what? Like I said, comic book shenanigans. Don't worry about it. But they came back, and now all of a sudden they had a son. They had a 12-year-old son named Jonathan Kent. Jonathan Kent develops superpowers, much like his father, and becomes Superboy. Fast forward a couple more years, more comic book shenanigans. Jonathan Kent is now no longer 12. He goes from being 12 years old to 17 years old. And that's where we're at now. More comic book shenanigans. Superman has to leave Earth, and he leaves the role of Superman to his son, who he feels is more than ready to take it up. So remember, when you think of the current bisexual Superman, you're not thinking of this guy. You're thinking of this guy. I'm probably going to actually do that the other way around, but whatever. Or maybe not. I don't know. So that's already the part of the problem. Now here's my criticism of it. Like I said, I have no problem with representation. I have no problem with characters being gay or bisexual. There's always that twinge of like, my issue with it is it does feel like bandwagon jumping. It feels like they're trying to do this just to... Maybe Tom Taylor, the writer, doesn't see it that way, but I definitely feel like the fucking heads of DC definitely see it that way. And I feel like that's why they so went along with the bisexual thing, so they can kind of have their cake and eat it too. Ooh, which is a weird statement. Why would you not eat cake? But they want to have it both ways. Insert bisexual joke there at your own will. But they want to make it so that they're making some sort of change, but they also want to leave themselves with wiggle room, so if that change doesn't pay off the way they want it to, they can just go back to a more normal a heteronormative status quo. Oh, I think that's why Robin was bisexual as well. So the minute everybody forget about their current boyfriends, they can just give them a girlfriend again. See, Robin's the weirdest one, because Robin has been historically straight for years. He's had girlfriends. In fact, another vigilante with his girlfriend, and I thought they were together, and now apparently they're not. I don't know what I missed there, but they must have broken up somewhere along the way. And now he just has a boyfriend. So it's just like... But, I mean, even Dean Cain made jokes about how he's like, Robin's bisexual. He goes, but who didn't see that one coming? It's just like, there have been jokes about Robin being gay for a long time. Even though that's not the original Robin either. There's been 4 of them. So, but I do see this as, maybe I'm just being cynical, but I do see this as a way to easily erase this if it doesn't pay off the exact way they want it to. And maybe it will. So maybe they won't have to. Or maybe I am just being too cynical. But I don't think I am. I think I've seen shit like this before. I've seen major character developments get swept under the rug. Because you have to remember other things too. Even if it's not necessarily a cynical move on the point or on the place of the heads of DC, who really decided to promote this. But you have to remember that Tom Taylor, the current writer, won't always be the writer of Superman. Eventually he'll move on. And then you also have to remember this other and very important thing. Remember how I said that this was Jonathan Kent, not Clark Kent. Clark Kent is away for a while, and they almost make it seem like he's going to die. But we've been there before. Superman has died before, he's come back before. And that's kind of my point. Clark Kent's coming back. Jonathan Kent isn't going to be Superman forever. Clark Kent is going to come back. Now, maybe when he comes back, Jonathan Kent will also call himself Superman. There's definitely been multiple of a certain character before. Hell, in Marvel Comics, they do that shit all the time. But Clark Kent will come back as the main Superman. Mark my words on that. I've seen that shit too many times to know that this is just going to be the new status quo. We have seen characters fucking retire, get injured, die, and have to go away and get replaced by someone else. And that can be to varying results. Sometimes the person they put in fits, sometimes not so much. But I mean, we've seen characters disappear for months, years, decades in one very particular case. And guess what happens? They always come back. The original guy always comes back. So it's a guaranteed. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Clark Kent will come back, so the original straight Superman will be back. Mark my words. It's going to fucking happen. So maybe the significance of Jonathan Kent being bisexual won't necessarily be lessened, but the significance of Jonathan Kent himself will most definitely be. It just will. I just know it. So yeah, this has just been something that's been talked about a lot this past week, and I just had my thoughts on it, and I just want to throw my hat in. I just want to throw my 2 cents in, because fuck it, everyone else did. And most of them got it wrong. But you know what? Good for him for coming out. It's like, I've never been one to see myself in any comic book character. I don't know why. Maybe just because I live in that heteronormative world where I don't have to see it because I see it every day. Maybe people who aren't. Maybe people who are on the outside, like people who are part of the LGBTQ community who don't get that representation. They need to see that shit. Maybe that's why they need representation so much. Maybe it helps them. So if it does, good. I don't see how, but I don't need to see how. So, although if they really wanted representation at DC, maybe they would hire more actual members of the LGBTQ community who, you know, for writer and artist positions. You know, they actually be the creators of these comic books. Maybe that would help. They have some, but not that many. Usually when these big moments are written and, you know, done and penned by fucking just straight white dudes like me, who can write comic books, you know, do art. That's not exactly like me, but you get what I mean. Alright, I'm just rambling now. So yeah, that was this week's episode of Weekend Reading. Went a little longer than I wanted, but what are you going to do? I decided to ramble. I hope you enjoy your weekend, and I hope you enjoy your reading. Have a good one.